Hello, I hope you're well, welcome, or welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one of those booktube classics, an unhaul. So, during the pandemic, I have exhibited little to no shelf control. Like none. I have been lucky enough to be able to continue to buy books at a astonishing rate, but while my passion for books knows no bounds, my ability to actually house them does. If I'm going to continue to buy books, I need to clear some of what I do have out. So I've tried to break up the video into three categories of books I'm unhauling. The first section is going to be books that I've started but haven't completed. The second will be books that I've read and I have feelings about, good, bad, and indifferent. And the last will be those books that have literally been collecting dust on my shelves because I have not touched them since I put them there. Let's get started though with the first category, which are those books that I have not completed. The first book is actually a series of books. The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. We're going to put these on my lap. These were a surprise hit with me when I picked them up. I'm not generally a YA reader, but I read the first 3 books in the series and the prequel in like a 2-week span of time. And I was lugging these massive guys on the train with me to work every day while I was reading them. So I think that requires some dedication. But when I was going through my shelves and got to War Storm, which is the last book in the series, I actually found my bookmark still on page 50. I got this right as it was released in 2018. Apparently lost steam and interest somewhere on page 50 and have not picked it up in the 2 years since. So I figured it was time to part with this series. I will have to say though, if this is ever made into a movie, I nominate Helen Mirren to play Cal's grandmother. The next book I'm going to talk about is Night Film by Marisha Pessl, and I have had this book for yonks. I remember picking this up when I was still working at the literary agency, so this is going back to like 2013 or 2014. Again, it's not a genre that I tend to go towards. It's a thriller. It's a story where a body of a young woman turns up. Everyone thinks it's suicide, but this one detective suspects otherwise, and so that sets off the whole book essentially. The victim is the daughter of this cult horror film director, hence the title Night Film, but I only got about 50 pages into it, and so I don't actually know what that has to do with anything. I think the one reason this book has survived countless unhauls since 2013 or 2014 is because it is a signed edition. I have no inclination to read this, unfortunately, and I know someone who loves thrillers and who will probably enjoy it, so I'm going to pass it off to them. Next up, Donna Tartt's The Secret History. I know just how many people love this book. I don't think it's possible to be on Bookstagram and not have this book appear on your feed at least once a day. So I know this is going to be a very unpopular opinion. I could not get into this book, and I honestly don't know if it's because it was so hyped up, and because it was so hyped up I already somewhat knew what was going to happen. I don't know if that's what turned me off. It's very possible that it could. Regardless, I have had this book on my shelf for years at this point, have always said that I should pick it up and try again, and just haven't, so I think it is time to unhaul this bad boy. The next book is slightly different. It is Atomic Blonde by Anthony Johnston, and it is a graphic novel. I think it's actually the first and only graphic novel I've attempted to read at this point. I love spies, like 007, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Red, The Debt, basically any spy movie that has ever been released, I have seen. And so I did see Atomic Blonde in theaters, and I remember being like, what the duck have I just seen? I don't understand. I think it's good, but I really want to see the source material, which is why I ended up buying this, because I kind of wanted to see what the movie was based on. And the premise is so up my alley because of spies, because it's set in the Cold War, and it's this badass MI6 agent. But as I said, graphic novels aren't something I normally lean towards. I don't really know much about them or have much experience reading them, so I think this was just not a great fit for me, but I'm sure there is someone out there who will love it, so we're gonna pass it on to them. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to talk about, I have already unhauled. It is Marlon James, The Book of Night Women. So I'm not really surprised that I've unhauled this book already. I have made attempts to read Marlon James novels in the past and have never succeeded, but I was hoping that the subject matter of this one would have won me over. And I had really high hopes for it. It's set in the 18th century in Jamaica, which is where my family's from, and it is about this slave, Lilith, on a sugar plantation there during the 18th century. I don't know much about slavery in Jamaica or the slave experience, so I thought this would be an interesting way of learning a little bit more about it. I'm going to say I made a valiant attempt. I read about 1/3 of the book before I decided, like, I can't. It was a struggle to get that far. I don't connect with his writing style, which I find maybe a little bit obtuse. It has been rehoused, and I'm sure it is quite happy with my aunt. So the next set of books in my unhaul are going to be those books that I have feelings about. Good, bad, and indifferent. The first book is The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by authors Mary Ann Shaffer and Annie Barrows. And I actually recently rewatched the Netflix movie version of this with Michael Hausman and Lily James, and think it's so enjoyable and so adorable, which is how I feel about the book too. It was a really sweet and a very quick read. It was interesting because it was about this occupation of the island of Guernsey in the English Channel by the Nazis during World War II, which is something that I didn't know a ton about. But it is more, I would say, more on the fluffy side of historical fiction, and I prefer those historical fictions that kind of hit you in the gut. As I said, this was very, very sweet, but it's not a book that I see myself reading for a second or third time. If I want to relive the story, I'll probably rewatch the Netflix movie, which I thought was really cute. And yes, there were some changes to the overall story for the movie itself. I was, for the most part, okay with them. So yeah, that's how I feel. I liked it, would recommend it, just don't see myself reading it again. So the next book is Show Them a Good Time by Nicole Flattery. This is a book I spoke about in my quarantine reads video, so I will link that for you guys. It is a short story collection, and as I said in that video, I really did not like this book. This was a true trial of perseverance for me to get through. I was doing a happy dance once I had finished it. I just found the stories dull and didn't think much of anything happened in them, which very well might have been the point given what the subject matter of the book was. The two of us just didn't click. So the next book in my unhaul is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee, which I feel like is a shock unhaul. It is such a classic, and I enjoyed it when I read it. But the fact is, I read this in 9th grade 15 years ago, and I have not once picked up this book since. It still has my 14 and 15-year-old highlighting job, which, to be honest, is quite appalling because I hardly see anything highlighted. At some point I would like to reread this, but this particular edition of the book really does nothing for me. I would much rather get because I am a horrible person, a prettier copy of this book in the future when I do want to read it. So I'm ready to pass this on. The next book is Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. To be honest, it was one of the few books that we read in high school that as a class everyone seemed to enjoy. It is a truly powerful story of experiencing the Vietnam War written by a Vietnam veteran. It's a series of linked stories is probably the best way to describe it. It's not really a novel, but it's not necessarily a short story collection either. Based on the subject matter, I would say that it does have some triggering and slightly disturbing moments within the book, so just bear that in mind. But it was eye-opening to what being in Vietnam was like. I just don't personally see myself rereading this anytime soon. I actually want to feel like this is a book that my father should read, being that it was his generation that went to Vietnam. He had his draft card, but I do think it's something that he would enjoy reading, so I'm hoping that I can pass it along to him because it is a very worthwhile read. The next book is Rhett Butler's People by Donald McCaig. For a very long time, I considered Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell my favorite novel, probably of all time, and it took me a long time to acknowledge the many problematic elements of that book, including the depiction of its black characters, the sympathetic depiction of the KKK, and its portrayal of sexual assault, among other things. But when I bought this book quite a number of years ago, I was buying basically any sequel to Gone with the Wind that I could find. Margaret Mitchell only wrote the one book, but there have been many fan versions of sequels, including this one. And this one, Rhett Butler's People, is Gone with the Wind told from Rhett Butler's perspective, so it is very much the midnight sun of its time period. Fact of the matter is, I know I read this, but I don't remember what my thoughts on it were. So it couldn't have left much of an impact on me. Because of that, I feel like it's time I let it go. I don't see myself rereading it again. That's really all I got to say on that. I don't see myself rereading it. So here's another book that I spoke about in my quarantine reads video, so I'll again link that for you guys. But this is The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. I really enjoyed the characters in this, as I said in that video. I really thought the prose was chef's kiss, but it's a little bit too sci-fi for me. That's not a genre I tend to read, and when I do read it, it tends to be set on planet Earth with, time machines. Space, not so much. I haven't even seen any of the Star Wars movies. I know, sacrilege for many of you. I received this from my friend who is Simon's literary agent, and so I hope she forgives me for passing this along to someone who will appreciate it and love it as much as it deserves to be loved. It's just that I don't see myself rereading it. So the last set of books that I'm going to talk about are those books that have been collecting dust on my shelves. They are books that I bought, put down on my shelf, and then have proceeded to ignore. I am probably the last person on the planet to have not read The Book Thief by Markus Zusack. Is that how you pronounce it, guys? Let me know in the comment. And I don't know why I haven't read it yet. To be quite honest, I really don't. Based on what I know about what the book is actually about, I am 110, not just 100, 110% positive that I would really, really enjoy and be moved by it. But I've had it for years and I have not read it yet. And I don't know why. I really, really don't know. I don't know if it might be the fact that it's YA, and again, that's not a genre that I read a ton of books in, and that might be some weird hang-up I have. But basically, I think I could pass this on to someone who will read it right away and really enjoy it, and I would much rather repurchase it at a later date when I am ready to actually read it. The next book is Varina by Charles Frazier, and I bought this book for a couple of reasons. The not so great reason is that it is another signed copy. The good reason was that I thought that the subject was really interesting. It's an American Civil War historical fiction novel that is focused on Jefferson Davis's wife. So he was the president of the Confederacy. So it focuses on her story both during and in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, when they would basically be persona non gratas or considered traitors. But I've had this book since it was released, and I have not touched it. I honestly don't know what to do with it because it is a signed copy. I just don't feel like I will be picking it up anytime soon, so I should probably rehouse it with someone who will appreciate a signed copy of this book. Next up, The Muse by Jessie Burton. And I bought this book because I thought the cover was beautiful. I liked the concept of a painting being the connecting strand between two characters and two different time periods. But since I have never read the book, I don't actually know how that all plays out. It's just not a book I have ever reached for or really, even put on a TBR and not gotten to it at this point. And I've had it for a few years. I also never read The Miniaturist, so probably Jessie Burton books just aren't for me. So yeah, I don't think at this point that this is a book that I will be reading anytime soon. The next book is 4,000 Years of Uppity Women by Vicky Leone. I love these nonfiction survey books where essentially each chapter is a biography or information on a different individual. And so I don't doubt that I would enjoy this. However, because of Black Lives Matter, I have come to understand the racist connotations of the word uppity, which was used by white people to describe black individuals who they felt didn't know their place. And given that, I don't necessarily feel all that comfortable having this book on my bookshelf. I do have other books of a similar vein dealing with women who have broken the mold, behaved badly throughout history, so I think I can do without this one. The last book is Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford. This has not been sitting on my bookshelf collecting dust because I only just got it. I think the book actually only came out this year. No, actually. It has not. It came out 2 years ago. Oh, interesting. I somehow inadvertently ordered 2 copies, which I do not need. So I'm looking forward to reading the copy that I am keeping. I think it will be this dark, somewhat folkloric story about these characters who have some sort of healing abilities, but I don't know much more than that because I haven't read it. But yeah, I just don't need 2 copies, so this one will be moving on. So with that, we have finished my unhaul. Did unhauling these books give me more room on my bookcase? Absolutely not. Has that prevented me from picking up books from Barnes & Nobles and placing another order on bookshop.org? Absolutely not. Anyway guys, I do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please remember to give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe so that you receive notifications when my next video goes live. Thanks everyone. Bye!